A little boy was standing beside the fountain when the billionaire noticed him. He was only 5 years old, wearing a faded green sweater, oversized sneakers, and a tiny backpack with a broken zipper. In one hand, he carried a pair of worn gardening gloves. In the other, he held an old brass key. He stood outside the private garden of one of the city's most expensive hotels, watching employees hurry through the glass doors. A security officer noticed him and walked over. "Where is your father?" The boy looked up with calm, tired eyes. "He couldn't come today," he whispered. The officer frowned. "Why not?" the security asked. "My daddy is sick," the little boy responded. "Then where is your mother?" the security asked him again. The boy lowered his eyes. "She isn't here." The officer glanced at the gardening gloves. "What are you doing with those?" The boy pointed toward the hotel garden. "My daddy takes care of the flowers." Those few innocent words would soon uncover a problem the hotel's billionaire owner had never realized existed. Before we continue this emotional story, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes kindness still matters, and subscribe for more stories about compassion, courage, and second chances. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from today, your city, state, or country. We love seeing how far these stories travel. The boy's name was Noah Bennett. He was 5 years old. His father, Samuel, had worked as a groundskeeper at the Grand Meridian Hotel for almost 9 years. Samuel arrived before sunrise every morning. He watered the flowers, trimmed the hedges, repaired damaged sprinklers, cleared leaves from the walkways, and made sure the hotel's private courtyard looked perfect before the first guest ever stepped outside. Most guests never knew his name. They simply admired the garden. Samuel was used to that. He didn't need praise. He needed a paycheck. He was raising Noah alone after Noah's mother died when the boy was barely 2. Since then, Samuel had worked almost every extra shift available. He had one simple rule for his son. No matter how hard life gets, we don't make our problems somebody else's burden. Noah remembered those words. He also remembered his father's cough. For several weeks, Samuel had been getting weaker. At first, he blamed the cold weather, then the long hours, then exhaustion. But 3 days before an important corporate luncheon at the hotel, Samuel collapsed beside the garden shed. A doctor told him he needed treatment and several days of rest. Samuel immediately thought about work. Time away meant lost wages. Lost wages meant difficulty paying rent. And difficulty paying rent meant Noah could lose the only home he had known. Samuel called his supervisor. He expected concern. Instead, the response was cold. "If you can't come in tomorrow, Samuel, we'll have to find someone who can." The call ended. Samuel stared at the ceiling. Noah had heard everything. The next morning, Samuel tried to get out of bed. He couldn't. His fever had returned. Noah watched his father struggle to put on his work boots. "Daddy, you don't have to go," little Noah said to his father Samuel. Samuel smiled weakly. "I'll be fine." But Noah knew he wasn't. His father reached for the gardening bag beside the door. Noah grabbed it first. "What are you doing?" Samuel asked. "I'll help," Noah responded. Samuel shook his head. "You're too little." Noah looked toward the window. "But the flowers still need you." Samuel smiled sadly. "They'll survive one day." Noah thought about that. Then he picked up his father's gardening gloves. "I won't let them die." Before Samuel could stop him, Noah packed the gloves into his little backpack. He also took the brass key to the garden shed. Samuel had taught him never to lose it. Noah kissed his father's forehead. "I'll do it, Daddy. I can." Then he left. He followed the bus route his father used every morning. He had traveled it before with Samuel. But that morning, he was alone. By the time Noah reached the Grand Meridian, the morning rush had already begun. Employees hurried through the entrance. Guests walked toward elevators. Phones rang. Luggage rolled across marble floors. Nobody noticed the little boy at first. Then a security officer saw him, standing alone. Within minutes, several employees gathered around him. "Where is your parent?" "My daddy is sick," Noah answered. "Does he know you're here?" Noah nodded. "He couldn't come." Someone suggested calling the police. Another employee wanted to contact child services. But Noah didn't cry. He simply held his backpack tightly. "I have to water the flowers," he said to them. The hotel manager, Richard Cole, arrived moments later. He recognized Samuel's name. "What exactly are you doing here?" Noah held up the gardening gloves. "Finishing my daddy's work." Richard sighed. "You can't work here." Noah looked confused. "But my daddy does." Richard glanced at his watch. The hotel was preparing for one of its biggest corporate events of the year. He didn't have time for this. Someone will call your father. Noah shook his head. He can't come. Richard rubbed his forehead. Where does he work? Richard asked. The garden. Noah responded. Richard finally understood. He asked another groundskeeper to take Noah outside. But before they could leave, Noah pointed toward a flower bed. That one needs water. Richard looked. A rose bush near the fountain was beginning to wilt. Noah walked closer. My daddy said that one gets sick when the soil gets too dry. Richard stared at him. The boy was right. He knew exactly what his father had taught him. Richard called another employee to handle the garden. Then something unexpected happened. The hotel's billionaire owner arrived. Her name was Evelyn Hart. Evelyn was 38 years old and had built Hart Hospitality from one small boutique hotel into a luxury hotel empire worth billions. Business magazines described her as brilliant. Investors called her disciplined. Employees called her intimidating. Her schedule was planned weeks in advance. She knew occupancy numbers, payroll figures, revenue targets, expansion costs. She knew almost every important number connected to the company. But she didn't know Samuel Bennett. Not personally. She knew his name appeared on payroll reports. That was all. Evelyn entered the lobby expecting to review the day's corporate luncheon. Instead, she saw a small boy sitting beside the security desk with a gardening bag between his feet. She stopped. Who is he? Richard hurried toward her. He's the son of one of our groundskeepers. Why is he here? Evelyn asked. His father is sick. Richard answered. Evelyn looked at Noah. What is your name? She asked. Noah. Richard replied. Where is your father? Evelyn got curious. At home, ma'am, Richard responded. Evelyn moved to him. Hey, little man. Why did you come here? Evelyn spoke to him with a smile. Noah looked down at the gardening gloves. Because he couldn't. Evelyn waited. Noah finally looked up. He was worried the flowers wouldn't get water. Something about that answer made Evelyn pause. She walked toward him and crouched down. What is your father's name? Samuel Bennett. Evelyn knew the name. She looked at the gardening bag. What is the key for? The garden shed. Can you show me? Noah nodded. Evelyn stood. Let's go. Richard followed them. They walked through the hotel toward the private courtyard. Noah unlocked the garden shed. Inside were gardening tools arranged neatly along the walls. There were handwritten notes taped above the shelves. Water roses before 10. Check irrigation near the east wall. Replace broken sprinkler head by the fountain. Evelyn read them slowly. Then she looked around. For years, she had walked through this garden without wondering who maintained it. Now she saw everything differently. The polished stone paths, the trimmed trees, the flower beds, the clean outdoor furniture. All of it existed because someone arrived before sunrise every morning. Evelyn asked Richard how long Samuel had worked there. Almost 9 years, ma'am. Any disciplinary problems? Evelyn asked. None. Richard replied. Attendance issues? She asked again. Excellent record, ma'am. Richard replied. Benefits? Evelyn asked again as she looked around the garden. Richard hesitated. Basic coverage, ma'am. Evelyn looked at him. Why basic? Richard explained that groundskeeping was handled through an outside contractor. Evelyn asked how much Samuel earned. Richard gave her the number. She went quiet. The salary was barely enough to cover rent, food, and transportation. Yet Evelyn had approved executive bonuses larger than Samuel's annual income without thinking twice. Noah continued watering the flowers. Then Evelyn noticed something else. A small paper lunch bag sat inside his backpack. What's that? Daddy's lunch. But your father is home. Noah nodded. He forgets to eat when he's sick. Evelyn looked at the boy, 5 years old, standing in a billion-dollar hotel, carrying gardening gloves and his father's lunch. She canceled her luncheon. Then she asked Noah one question. Can you take me to your father? An hour later, Evelyn's car stopped outside an aging apartment building. Noah jumped out. Evelyn followed him upstairs carrying groceries and medicine. Samuel opened the door. He looked embarrassed, then shocked, then frightened. He immediately tried to stand. Evelyn stopped him. Please sit down. Samuel apologized. I didn't mean for Noah to come here. Evelyn looked at the boy. He came because he loves you. Samuel looked away. Evelyn asked about his condition. Samuel explained that he had been delaying treatment because he couldn't afford to miss work. He said he expected to return as soon as he could stand. Evelyn looked around the apartment. The furniture was old. The heater was broken. A few children's drawings covered the refrigerator. A small bookshelf held worn children's books. There was nothing luxurious. But everything was clean. Everything was cared for. Evelyn realized Samuel had spent years maintaining beautiful spaces for wealthy people while struggling to keep his own home comfortable. And nobody at the company had noticed. Not because Samuel had hidden his problems, but because nobody had asked. Before leaving, Evelyn told him something he had not expected to hear. "Your job is safe." Samuel stared at her. "You don't have to worry about losing it because you're sick." He looked down. "Thank you, ma'am." Evelyn nodded. "But I'm not finished." That afternoon, she returned to the Grand Meridian. Instead of going to her office, she called every senior manager into the conference room. They expected a discussion about the canceled luncheon. Instead, Evelyn placed Samuel's employment file on the table. "How many of our employees are one emergency away from financial disaster?" Silence. "How many have delayed medical treatment because they can't afford to miss work?" Nobody answered. "How many of our contracted workers have no meaningful emergency support?" Again, silence. Evelyn looked around the room. "We have spent years measuring what employees cost us." She paused. "We haven't spent enough time asking what happens when we fail them." She announced immediate paid medical leave for Samuel. His position would remain protected. His medical treatment would be covered. Then she ordered a review of every contracted worker across the company. A new emergency assistance fund was created. Health coverage was expanded for lower-paid workers. Paid family leave was introduced. Childcare assistance became available. Employees could request emergency help without having to explain their private circumstances to their direct supervisors. And every senior manager would now spend time working alongside frontline employees. Some board members questioned the cost. Evelyn gave them a simple answer. "If our success depends on people being afraid to get sick, then our success isn't worth much." The changes were uncomfortable at first. Some managers complained. Some executives believed the company was becoming too generous. But employees noticed. A security guard who had been sleeping in his car received temporary housing assistance. A dishwasher received help paying for his daughter's medical treatment. A housekeeper was able to take family leave without losing her income. Workers who had previously been afraid to ask for help began speaking. And something unexpected happened. Employee turnover fell. Productivity increased. Managers began hearing about problems before they became crises. People started trusting each other. Samuel recovered slowly. With proper treatment and enough time to rest, his strength returned. When he finally came back to the hotel, Evelyn offered him a new position overseeing garden operations. The salary was higher. The hours were better. And he would train other groundskeepers. Samuel accepted. But he had one question. "Why are you doing this?" Evelyn thought about Noah. "Because your son reminded me of something I forgot." Samuel smiled. "What?" "That a company is made of people before it's made of numbers." Noah continued visiting the hotel. Employees knew him by name. He loved sitting near the fountain with a coloring book while his father worked. One afternoon, Evelyn found him drawing a large building surrounded by flowers. "What are you drawing?" "My daddy's new office." Evelyn laughed. "He has an office now?" Noah nodded seriously. "He says he can see the garden better from there." Years passed. Noah grew older. The story of the little boy who came to work carrying his father's gardening bag became part of Hart Hospitality's leadership training. New managers heard the story during orientation. Not because Noah had saved the company. He hadn't. He had simply loved his father enough to do something bravely small. But that small act forced hundreds of adults to notice what they had stopped seeing. The company eventually created the Bennett Family Fund. Its purpose was simple: to help employees facing sudden illness, family emergencies, housing problems, or other situations that could destroy a household overnight. The plaque outside the program's office carried one sentence: "No family should have to choose between caring for someone they love and surviving the month." At the opening ceremony, Samuel stood beside Noah. Noah was older now. He wore a small blue jacket and held his father's hand. Evelyn stood before hundreds of employees. She could have talked about revenue. She could have talked about growth. Instead, she talked about attention. Sometimes leadership begins with noticing the person everyone else walks past. Samuel looked at his son. Noah smiled. The boy who had once entered the hotel carrying gardening gloves had become a reminder that compassion does not require wealth. It requires attention. Before this story ends, tell us in the comments where you're watching from and what part of this story touched you most. And if you believe one small act of kindness can change someone's future, share this story with someone who needs that reminder today. Please like this video and subscribe for more emotional stories about courage, dignity, compassion, and second chances. That morning, Noah thought he was simply helping his father water a few flowers. He never imagined that his decision would change an entire company. He never imagined that executives would rethink the way they treated the people who worked for them. And he certainly never imagined that a billionaire would learn one of life's most important lessons from a 5-year-old boy. Sometimes change doesn't begin inside a boardroom. Sometimes it walks through the front door carrying a worn gardening bag. Sometimes the smallest person in the room is the one who reminds everyone else what it means to be human.